Next item we have is approval of the minutes from February meeting. Do we not have a copy of that? It was supposed to be on here, wasn't it?
And, okay, so for this item, we have a request.
Yeah, so for the minutes, they were supposed to be on the screen, but unfortunately, the screens are down right now. They were working for council. For some reason, they just stopped working, so we do apologize for that. If y'all want to have a rotating copy of the minutes, we're more than welcome to provide that. But that's the best we can do right now because of the screens.
I reviewed it at home, so I'm.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
You did too?
I also reviewed it. It's in my packet, yeah.
Okay, so,
Okay.
okay, we'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I
And-
second that.
What? No, I'm listening for a motion.
Oh, I make a motion to approve the minutes. Do I have a second?
Second. It's moved and second, we have approve the minutes, all in favor? Opposed? Good.
And Mr. Chairman and Commission, if y'all can just speak into the mic since we are recording, and that way the crowd can hear. Thank you.
Okay. All right, I'm getting my glasses back on. We also have a cancellation notice for April the 9th. Do we have to approve that too? No. Okay, we'll just go from one then. It's just on here. Okay, we are now ready at 6:09 to open a public hearing for consideration and action regarding a request for a specific use permit to allow a convenience store with fuel sales at 500 South Saginaw Boulevard. Staff have any comments?
Yes. Yes, sir.
No. Staff?
Yes, sir. So the applicant is requesting for an SUP for the allowance of a convenience store with fuel cells. Currently, the site is zoned community commercial, and it is part of the Saginaw Boulevard overlay district. So they are proposing an above ground DEF tank. Yes.
I'm sorry, what was an over and above ground?
An above ground DEF tank.
Okay,
The diesel emission
got it.
fuel.
Yes, sir. Currently, staff does not recommend approval of this, seeing that it's on the overlay district and it is on the main corridor. And we also have the applicant here to answer any of y'all's questions.
Thank you. All right, is there any public comments now?
Do you want to come up?
Oh, speak in the mic. They're recording us, we've got to record you too.
Yeah, I'm just here for the owner of the property, Circle K, as the general contractor. It was a poly tank, about 6,000 gallons, big white one with big Circle K lettering and stuff on it. So I know that I talked to Alan and Scott, and they were both really opposed to the whole idea. But the owner of the property insists that we go through the process and just make sure that everything's good. So I'm spending my evening with you folks today.
I guess also need to state your name and address.
I am Tom Bonanno with MSCS Spatco.
I don't have too many. I mean, it's the gas station that I drive past all the time and,
Yes.
and visit, and it, I guess, got renovated or changed. And this was something that the owner was wanting to add to it.
Yes, so the diesel side, the high flow on the
Yep.
backside, they put some new dispensers up there to have DEF run to that. So the tank isn't underground, it was just gonna be above ground, kind of tucked out of the way.
I understand.
And after review, there's really no place to put it where you couldn't see it from the road. So they were just not,
Understood?
yeah.
Questions for him?
No, sir, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, guys, appreciate your time.
Okay. Okay. Do we have any other questions or discussion? Do we have to close it first?
We close the hearing. Yeah.
close the hearing and
Yes,
then
sir.
have discussion?
Go ahead and close it first.
Let's go ahead and close the hearing now at 6:12. Okay, we now have some discussion from the council here. Any other questions or comments?
I have no questions or concerns.
Neither do I.
My only comment is that this is part of the overlay district, and we're trying to improve our city and not have that sort of a thing visible from the boulevard, so as we're trying to improve. So it's only one thing I can see as we go.
Yes, sir. And it's also our understanding that they have other options to store the diesel.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we'll now entertain a motion.
Excuse me. Yeah, you go.
I'll make a motion to deny the consideration and action regarding a request for a special use permit to allow a convenience store with fuel sales at 500 South Saginaw Boulevard.
I second that motion.
And can we reword that to recommend, deny, denial?
It was denied.
Yes,
Oh, deny that to the council.
yes. Okay. All right, it's been moved and seconded that we recommend denial. All in favor? Anybody opposed? Okay, thank you. That one is recommend denial to the city council. Okay. Second item, we'll open up a public hearing at 6:14 for consideration and action regarding a request for a specific use permit to allow a tobacco shop at 1205 D North Saginaw Boulevard.
Yes. So the applicant is requesting an SUP to open up a vape shop with a limited sales of 15% tobacco. So the city is classifying this as a tobacco shop because we don't have a classification for a vape shop. We have received 2 opposition letters, and those are the attachments that we distributed to y'all. One of those is a representative for Albertsons that is in the same lot and shopping district. But they have signed and shared a declaration that opposes the sales of cigarettes, smoke shops, or any other establishments with whose principal business is to sell tobacco. So for that reason, they are opposing the tobacco shop and the SUP request. Staff recommends denial of this SUP.
Thank you. All right, do we have anyone
I-
here to, for public comments? Yep. Here, just state your name and address and then.
Thank you, everybody. Well, it's a tobacco
Can
store.
you state your name and address?
My name?
Your name and your address?
My name is Naveen Pradhan, and I'm an applicant for the SAP for 1205D North Saginaw Boulevard for tobacco store. I just want to add, though it's called, like C mentioned, it's a tobacco store, but it's not a full-fledged tobacco store. It's mostly a vape. And I'm trying to put up also drinks and candies and chips and all that, but it's going to be like not that you can find easily in the other regular convenience store. They call like exotic flavored stuff. And I'm not trying to carry any. I'm actually not allowed to carry any glass items, though it's called tobacco store. So it's basically more vapes, so no glass items at all, no pipes, no bongs, and all that stuff. And even my tobacco sales and accessories would be limited to only 15%, as they have the agreement with the Albertsons. I think Albertsons was not aware of this fact, and I was talking with the property manager and also with the attorney, their attorney. I think they're talking also with the Albertson about this. So I know they're opposing this based on that, but we're not going to be violating any of the agreements they have. So I'm not sure whether they have respond to that. But as of now, that's what I'm told. That everything should be clear, so we're not violating anything at all. In regards to their opposition for the SUP. So if you have any other questions regarding that, so I'll try my best to answer.
I have a question. Where is the location 1205D? What are you next to? Is it next to
It's
the,
next to the liquor store, right next to the liquor store, the Fossil Creek Liquor Store.
So question, that would be the former T-Mobile space?
Yes, yes.
Okay, because there's two open spots, a former nail salon and the former
Correct.
T-Mobile. Okay.
Yeah, it's just next to the liquor store. I thought it would be more compatible.
I guess I have a question for the lawyer, for the city attorney. So Albertsons is stating in here that they had an agreement with, it looks like, the previous developer owner of the center. Now I understand it has a new owner, but whenever they came into the property, they had an agreement that no tobacco store would be allowed in the shopping center. So especially with the prospective merger with Kroger on the horizon, I am concerned, that this might be another, thing to not make Albertsons happy.
Sure. So as far as any contract, so is the fact correct that there is a new owner of this lot? That the original contract that Albertsons had with the lot is not?
It says here, Albertsons and Short as a successor in interest to Carrier Village Development. So it sounds like Albertsons' agreement was with Carrier Village Development signed March 20th, 2001. And then now Short is, this Short Family Trust is now in place of Carrier Village Development. So,
Give me one moment to read this letter.
Okay.
I want to add a little bit on that also, please.
for sure.
If you want to go ahead and
Okay.
speak your piece while I read this, that's fine.
Yes, sir.
Okay. The tobacco store that defined in the contract is any business, the primary purpose would be sell tobacco permits, tobacco and tobacco-related products. But the vape shop I'm proposing would be not there for primarily to sell the tobacco products.
Okay, I understand where you're going here. So vapes weren't around in 2001, right?
Okay.
So you're telling us, the P and Z Commission, that 50% or less of your sales will be tobacco products. But does that 50% or less include vapes?
No.
So I believe where the distinction is, this is what probably in normal parlance you would call a head shop that doesn't sell pipes. This is a Delta 8
Yeah.
Kratom. Right, but so Delta 8, Kratom, probably Delta 9 as well, it sounds like. Items like that are not tobacco products. They are various substances that are derivatives of THC or other Kratom derivatives.
Yeah, for sure.
So it sounds like from reading this, it's not just 50, it's 15% tobacco, and then the rest will be other exotic items like that, like Delta 8 or.
So 15%.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, no cigarettes at all.
So 85% of your sales are going to be non-tobacco items.
Correct. But yeah, the non-tobacco items would include vapes though.
Would include nicotine vapes.
Nicotine vapes, yes.
Would you be
And this-
selling Kratom,
Yes.
and Delta TH5, all the special things
Yes.
that they're coming up with now?
Yes.
Okay.
But they're all under the limit of like 0.3%. That's what's
It'll all
allowed.
be under state
Yeah.
regulation. Okay, for sure. All right, but again, I just go back to, vapes weren't around in 2001, so to follow the spirit of this agreement,
Sure.
that isn't,
Yeah, so I can't speak to what, besides what Albertsons put in this letter, I can't speak to their original agreement on this. I agree, they probably weren't presupposing tobacco-free nicotine products. Or whatever other chemical you can get in a vaporizer these days. That being said, our concern, I think, is not any potential violation on behalf of the landowner letting in this business. or
yeah, no,
this
I
business.
have other concerns and questions
It's
too.
more, Albertsons as a neighbor does not appear, according to this letter, does not want this business present. And Albertsons as a neighbor is someone I think the city of Saginaw as any other citizen, you know, we can listen to the neighbors and what they want
Yeah.
in this. It appears also that there are other replies that have happened.
The Joe's Pizza and Pasta, the Italian restaurant, also was against this that I saw.
Yes, that other people in the subdivision also have some concerns. If the council wanted to consider
Yeah.
the concerns of the neighbors as well.
And staff
I-
does want to point out that we received a follow-up email from the Albertsons representative.
Okay.
After speaking with the owner and applicant, they still don't consider the proposed use to be outside the tobacco shop classification.
Okay. I don't want to hog the microphone, but I'm a smoker myself. I smoke cigarettes. And, you know, I don't typically go to tobacco shops. I go to a convenience store or even at the grocery store. So I guess, you know, this is going to be exotic items. What about your signage? Do you have anything in this? Do we have anything about the proposed signage? Is it going to be one sign, or is the windows going to be filled up with
The
stickers
signage will-
and
The signage would be handled under a different.
under a okay?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, like Bessie said, that would be outside the issue. Today, we're just discussing whether or not y'all would want to vote for or against this. Like Maria said, in addition to the Albertsons, just them recommending opposition, as well as Joe's Pizza, staff is not in favor of this. It does go against the overall appeal, again, with the Saginaw Overlay District. We have had some issues with other smoke shops in the area that have gone against some of the code of ordinances, so staff would be opposed to this as well.
Yeah.
And if I remember right, we had some fairly restrictive signage in the overlay district ordinance too. So, yeah. Okay. Any more questions for you? No.
No.
Okay, no more questions. We'll close the hearing at 6:24. All right. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
We have any other discussion?
My only thing is I mean, I understand that I just don't see the benefit to having Delta H sold next to Albertsons or a family restaurant. I just don't see the fit for the neighborhood.
I agree.
So with that, I would be against.
We also have another type, same business that opened up near the Walmart, and we were just eating at the restaurant the other night, the Chinese restaurant next door, and there are all sorts of things that I know were not supposed to be in there. Like the city staff mentioned, the whole window is filled with glass items. I know that's not this business, but I'm just pointing that out, that we, you know, the city allowed something similar. And I don't think that it's a benefit to the city, especially the way that we're going.
Discussion? Okay, we're now open for motions.
I make a motion to deny 2B SUP to approve a tobacco shop at 1205D North Saginaw Boulevard. And actually, I want to reword that. I make a motion to recommend to deny. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we recommend denial to the city council. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. We would recommend denial, so. Okay, that takes us all of our public hearings. And our next agenda item is our workshop. If you want to learn about public meeting in the state of Texas that stick around. If not, we have to.
I'll just reply
Is
all.
it there? Okay. Can I control it from here, or do I need to go up there? Like, is there a clicker? Will you be my clicker? Okay, perfect. Oh, that's just up there. Okay. Okay, we're getting the PowerPoint up right now. I promise I'll fly through this, because I also want to go home. I know y'all don't want to hang out too late. So, most of y'all had this last year. We have a new member. It is very similar to what you're probably used to at HOA. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page with any distinctions that are there. So and the slides will go up soon, but every regular, special, or called meeting of a governmental body needs to be open to the public. So what this means is if you are meeting regularly, there's an agenda that gets posted. We all have to let the public know a certain amount of time in advance, normally 72 hours, that this meeting is happening. So as far as y'all are concerned, your quorum is 3 people. If at any point there is a chance that 3 of you are going to be in the same area at the same time, you guys need to let Susie know, or someone know, secretary, someone, so that we can then post a notice of potential quorum. You'll see this a lot on the city website if there's like a big fundraiser happening, or like a social dinner or a fair. There will be a notice of potential quorum that pops up. This means that you may have 3 or more members of your council or your P&Z or of a different board in the same area hanging out. If you,
to ensure that there's not any, like, discussion amongst the board outside of a meeting?
yes, that's part of it. If y'all if there are ever 3 of you in a room together, do not, it's not like you're not allowed to be near each other. Like, you are allowed to be in the area. Do not discuss city work while you are together.
Past, present, or future?
Yes, don't even talk about your kids, talk about your life, talk about what cool thing you had for dinner or what you saw on TV. Do not discuss the city, because you run the risk, because you now have unintentionally formed a quorum by being together. And if you are discussing city business, you are now having an unposted meeting where city business may be being discussed.
But if
So-
there's 2 of us at Albertsons in the aisle, I can be like, that guy was,
Absolutely, yes, if there's 2.
Okay, so if there is only 2 of us, I can say,
Yeah.
I'm happy that restaurant's not coming. or
Yeah,
whatever.
something like that's fine. But yeah, once you, unfortunately, as you guys get to learn and experience and take part in really cool things by being on the commission, but it does limit y'all a little bit interacting as a social group outside of these meetings. So your quorum is just your simple majority. So it's 3 for y'all. If you ever are on a different board, check your quorum rules on it. But as far as this one's concerned, it's 3 here. So everything that you're doing is being governed by the government code 552 and the local government code. So that's kind of the main thing. With emails, don't ever reply all to an email that has been sent to you by a city. If you see city council members or P&Z members or any other members besides staff on that subject line, by replying all, you're forming a quorum in that communication, however unintentionally.
can you
Online.
explain this to all my assistant managers at work, please?
So, and that includes, I sent y'all kind of a mean email last week, that includes roll call. It seems like such an unnecessary, unimportant issue, but don't reply all to roll call, or to our quorum check. We haven't had this issue here at all, but don't be like, hey, this is a really cool idea, we should talk about this as a board, and then blast an email to the board at 10 p.m. at night being like, look how cool this idea is. That's an Open Meetings Act violation, please don't do it. We haven't had that issue here, I have had it in a different city. So things can be really exciting. Your communication should be going through your staff. They shouldn't be going through y'all. So I think we are on the record, so if you want to be on mic.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it's still being recorded, so
Okay.
if you do have a question, it just helps them be
Okay.
able to hear, because if you're not talking in the microphone, the audio won't pick up on it.
Okay. So for example, when we got the agenda last week or a couple weeks ago, it wasn't detailed, it was just the agenda. If I have a question about something that's on the agenda, can I ask the city staff about that?
Sure. You can ask city staff, there's some things they can't,
Tell me and can, yeah.
well, this isn't BOA, they can tell you a lot.
For example, I thought the thing with the gas station was just because they were renovating and changing over the name of the fuel convenience store, because it was like a Valero store, now it's a Circle K. So I thought it was just for that. I didn't realize it was about the tank until I got the full packet.
Sure.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Yes, so when we send out that link for the agenda, you can also go online, and the packet is published when we publish the agenda, and so all the attachments are on there. But apart from that, feel free to always give us a call or email, and we're more than welcome to go over an item with you
Got it.
beforehand.
Yeah, I didn't click all the way through. Okay.
I'm kind of off my iPad one anyway. So, I'm actually going to skip around. I don't know where it is on here, I'm sorry. But, so there is something called a walking quorum while we're doing quorums. I just want to hit that as well. So if one of you, if Chairperson A were to be like, I don't know how I feel about, I don't know, I'm going to make up something. This is not happening in Saginaw as far as I know, but I don't know how I feel about H Mart moving into the neighborhood. And they text, place 2 and say, how do you feel about this? And then they text place 3 and say, how do you feel about this? And then they text 4. Even though there was never one big group chat that all of y'all were hanging out in, you have unintentionally formed, or at least the first person has unintentionally formed a walking quorum. If you ever suspect you are being surveyed, so staff can reach out to y'all. Staff can do things like this. If you ever feel like you are being surveyed on your opinion on something, and you feel like all of y'all are being surveyed by each other on this opinion, and that one person is combining these ideas to put together a presentation or something, please don't be a part of that thread. Walking quorums are one of the most confusing things that happen because they're not well defined in the code. We just know from the Attorney General that we're not supposed to do them. So it's anytime you have a daisy chain of communications that eventually result in a conclusion. So 3 or more of you, even if you're not in the same group chat, all contributing to the same sort of pool of thought. Does that make sense? It's weird. It's a weird one, but if you think of the word daisy chain, that's how I always remember it. So really quickly, let's go through conflicts of interest. So you have a conflict of interest if a business comes forward and so let's read the code out loud so we have it in our head, but the action will have a special economic effect on a business entity in which the member has a substantial interest. So if you own stock in a company that comes before you, if your second cousin, well, maybe not second cousin, but if you have a cousin, well, yeah, let's say second cousin. You have a second cousin who owns your house, and that second cousin is the CFO of QT. If QT comes in this room, you need to recuse yourself, and you need to let me know before the meeting that you're going to recuse yourself so I can get you an affidavit that explains why we're recusing ourselves. If something happens halfway through a meeting and you realize as the applicant is speaking that they're your sister-in-law's or sister-in-law's brother or something, right? And you go, ooh, I know too much about this, or I have an interest in this. Just put your hand up, flag me down, we'll pause the meeting for a second, and we'll figure out if we need to recuse ourselves or not. It's okay if you didn't know ahead of time, but just let me know, because it can become an issue later if we do something and it turns out later that even if you weren't motivated by that familial tie or that business interest, the possibility or the public appearance that you may have been motivated by this can really cause issues in the future and can cause lawsuits in the future. So be on the lookout for if you have a business interest in something. So, can you go up, thank you. So for substantial interest, it's if you own 10% or more of the voting stock or shares, you owe 10% or more of the fair market value. You own 15% or more of the fair market value of the 15,000, excuse me, or more. You receive funds from the business that are in excess of 10%. Those are the specifically defined special interests. If you know that their success changes something in your well-being or your life, even if it's not this defined special interest, let us know so we can have you not vote on this item.
If ever there's a question of knowing someone, we bring it up and tell you, and then you and the city staff decide if we stay or not.
I'll decide, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
just let us know, because you knowing them isn't a problem. Saginaw's
Okay.
not that big. It's very possible that you see these guys at your weekly poker nights, but what matters is that what they're presenting isn't going to directly benefit you in any way. If it increases your friendship, I mean, it's fine, but it can't be an economic benefit to you, right? That being said, if it's like your dentist going up there, maybe let me know. Let's just make sure we just don't want this appearance of impropriety to ever happen. So if it's reasonably foreseeable that an action will have a special economic effect on your property, so if you own a home and there's an apartment complex going up next door that is going to crash the value or even increase the value, if it is going to affect the value on your home, if you get that notice in the mail saying you're within 200 feet, we need to know. You are a person now with an interest. That being said, theoretically, you're only a person with an interest if it could affect it within $2,500. You're a person with an interest. Just tell us so we can figure it out. We can figure out what we need to do in this situation. My style as an attorney is I would rather have you recuse yourself than everyone be like, I guess, and let y'all stay on. Because I don't want y'all to open yourselves up to liability or the city to be liable for anything that happens. It is much better for us just to have you be recused and just not participate in that conversation and then bring you back in for the next item than to have you at all possibly, caught up in this web of whether you were conflicted. So just let us know. So a member is considered to have a substantial interest if any of these other people have an interest. So your father, your mother, your children, your spouse, your in-laws, and then very specifically, your ex-spouse if you have a child in common that is still living. Very specific. I don't know why they've decided that is the distinction here, but if you have an ex-spouse and you have a child with them and that child is still alive, you and your ex-spouse are still intertwined as far as conflict law is concerned. I don't know why. I don't write it. I'm just telling y'all.
I misread that and I thought it said if the marriage is still living. I'm like, what? Can you expound on that?
Clearly someone was trying to not have a conflict. This is 100. Whenever you see things like this, that is almost certainly the
This
case.
came into play when I was first appointed here. My son was a city council member, and he had recused himself during the vote for
The P&Z portions.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And that's correct that they did that. So this is what I was saying about letting me know. So there is an affidavit that we have. You probably have a draft. I have a draft if you don't. There's an affidavit that we have that basically says, I'm recusing myself. Here's what my conflict is. Sorry. And then before the item is even called, or as the item is called, and the staff will intervene, or I'll intervene, or you can just raise your hand and say, for this item, I must recuse myself for a conflict of interest. And then I would rather you totally leave the room. Some city attorneys allow people to remain seated in the room. If you want to remain seated in the room, I will allow it, but I will make you sit in the back and be stone-faced and not sit near the applicant, or, just be as neutral as possible. I would much rather you go sit in the kitchenette until the conclusion of that item, just because I don't want there to be any implication that you are making faces or reacting or gesticulating, and that influence the commission in any way. So before anything happens, we have that affidavit. Ideally, we have it before so I can get it to the city secretary, but we can figure it out if there's live conflicts that arise. Okay, so now y'all's roll. All good? Okay. So we're just doing a training right now, y'all, so just so you know what's going on. So for the role of P and Z, if you ever have a question about what y'all want to do, it's very dry. You can pull up these statutes in the local government code. They explain what y'all can do. You also have power granted to you by your local ordinances that your council has passed. Those are in Appendix A and Appendix B. So you have several purposes here, but basically your whole point is that the community comes to you. They need sort of middlemen between them and the council in order to help make sure that goals are being met. So cities have short-term, they have long-term, they have comprehensive plans, they have master plans. They have goals for the city. Those goals hopefully align with what the citizens want. Citizens, as y'all have seen in these meetings, they don't know what P&Z does. They don't know necessarily what, some do, but the majority of your citizens don't know what a comprehensive plan is, or a master plan, or what zoning district they're in. They probably know they're in residential, but they don't know what their overlays are, right? So your job as P&Z is to be able to have council or have citizens come. We're able to educate the citizens on what's going on and why things are the way they are in their zoning district, but also to be able to take feedback from the citizens, and then recommend to council things that fit into council's goals. So you are that middle person. That doesn't mean that, as we know, when you deny things, it's not like council never hears them. But y'all are able to act as like a screen between the community and council, but also as sort of a throughway so that they can learn from y'all and see what y'all's concerns are. Y'all are a little closer to the community when it comes to zoning and planning issues than your council is. So, what is zoning? So zoning regulates how land is used in a community. We have a comp plan in Saginaw. It outlines how we should use future land, and ideally, slowly over time, even land that isn't future acquisitions. We can accommodate everything to fit into this comp plan. So zoning regulations are adopted in accordance with 211-004, and meaning that they're adopted in accordance with that comp plan. Your goal at the end of the day is for everything you do to push the city closer to being being in line with the comp plan. We have zoning maps. Zoning maps, you've all seen them, I'm sure. It's a big map. It has different colors on it. It tells you if you're in commercial. It tells you if you're in residential. It tells you within residential, is it single family, things like that. So you have your map, and then you also have your regulations that dictate those restrictions in those districts. So here's the zoning map. Here's the official zoning map of Saginaw. It may be a little outdated. I don't think I have Bowen overlay on it. But here's y'all's city. Here's where everything falls. You can see the different colors. You can see where the train tracks divide the city. as sort of a reference of where you are. And you can see all the little, residential areas and what has been zoned out commercial and industrial. So, in general, when you have a zoning ordinance, there is a broad presumption of validity. So if you ever read an ordinance that council passes that passes a zoning regulation, you'll see the words over and over again that the council has determined that this regulation or this ordinance or this resolution is integral to the health, moral, and welfare of the community or of the citizens of Saginaw or of the health of the city or something like that. And as long as a zoning regulation goes towards securing public safety, health, morals, and welfare, it is probably almost certainly a constitutional restriction or a constitutional regulation. So the main thing to consider when we're doing this is to become pretty familiar with your master plan. We want all zoning changes to respect this master plan, this comp plan. We want to make sure that whenever we approve a change or consider a change, we're considering the impact on surrounding properties. We're considering the suitability of the land. Don't put a mini golf course on the side of a cliff, is what they tell you in law school when they're teaching you this. It's not going to work. It's going to cause a lot of problems, and they're not going to get what they want done, and it's going to upset the neighbors as they level a cliffside. Consider relationship to public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. It always comes back to that. Is this going to affect the public health, safety, morals, or general welfare of a community? So, these are, when you are considering a zoning decision, these are generally what you should be considering. I'm going to let y'all look at them, and then I'm going to tell you what you shouldn't be considering. And y'all have done a good job in the past in here. Sometimes I've heard citizens say things in here, and I'm like, I wish that wasn't a part of our record. As long as y'all acknowledge it and don't consider it as part of your record, it's fine. But circulation of air and light, we want houses to have light. Potential fire hazards when housing is built on top of each other. Traffic control is always such a huge thing in our cities. Incompatible uses, that's don't put mini golf on a cliffside. Density of infrastructures, utilities, schools, property values. Whenever you have a apartment complex going up that's for families, if those families have kids, you're going to need a place for them to go to school. You're going to have traffic increase as people leave these apartment complexes. But also, if you have a school going up, we need schools and we want schools. You also have concerns about from 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the evening, you're going to have traffic coming in. And so we need to be aware of all of those considerations. And these are the main things you need to be looking at when you're considering zoning changes. So I think I have it in here, but I'm just going to tell you, it is never appropriate as a P&Z board or as a council or as any board representing a city government to say something along the lines of, well, what type of people are moving in here? We do not consider the type of people. We consider the effect that this will have on zoning. We consider traffic flow. We consider airflow. The second you start hearing people say what type of people are moving in, we have reached impermissible grounds to approve or deny something.
Like February?
Was that when we had that man say that? Couldn't.
Yeah, I'm gonna come back to that a little later because I got quite a few questions from that meeting.
So there were a couple of things that were said in that meeting. We were supposed to do training that meeting, but as long as those items were not, they can be said by the public. I can't control what they're saying. As long as y'all are not being like, well, I don't know, as long as y'all aren't considering those in y'all's decision, then it is okay. But we need to make clear in our record what we are considering in our decisions. That people in the audience, I'll tell you, y'all are a pretty small P&Z. I've had P&Zs that go till 3 o'clock in the morning in other cities. they somehow really bring out people who have strong opinions about the type of people moving into their neighborhood. And they see y'all as a tool to govern that. So we'll come back, we can discuss it now, or we can come back to it at the end, but I don't think I need to reinforce this point with y'all. You're all nodding, I think you all understand it, so. 100%. We have also, when we have fair housing, regardless of anything like that. So you're correct, it's unconstitutional, we can't consider that item, or that concern. Y'all don't need me to tell you, y'all know, but I just wanted to reiterate it for everyone. So, so more about this. So neighborhood boundaries, character. If you have a neighborhood, we don't really have them as much here, but if you have a neighborhood that's all farmland and someone wants to put in a factory, maybe that doesn't compute with the rest of the surrounding area, right? So preserve neighborhood boundaries. Does it look right? Does it fit in with everything? Using our land plan. If there is like a historical building there, maybe we have concerns about, preserving that historical building that we should consider. The environment, so the environment comes into a lot of, you hear people say runoff a lot, concrete control, right? Whenever you put in a building, you have to have parking, and is all of that going to affect the environment? Is there going to be runoff from this restaurant? If you have a food truck, where are they going to dump their oil? Things like that, all things that should be considered when we have zoning decisions or zoning requests in front of us. So there's a couple different types of zoning changes that you'll run into here. So just straight zoning, SUPs, which today we had SUPs, right? And then planned development districts, your PD changes. So your straight zoning changes, just standard, it's when you have ag going to single family, or you have industrial moving up to commercial, right? Something like that, or the other way, commercial to industrial. So there's not a lot to think about on these. Think about it, do what we did, but there's not a lot of like crazy restrictions in your ordinance you have to be worried about. Does it make sense to allow this person on this farmland to put up a single family residence? Maybe, maybe not. Just consider what's going on around it. So you either recommend approval or you recommend denial. Not huge. When you have an applicant bring these changes, we will often, I don't want to say we as Saginaw, when you have applicants in general bring these changes with you, to y'all, they'll often say, well, I can do this. Well, I'll do this. Oh, I'll make sure my garage is single family and in the back. The promises they're making to you are not enforceable. It's nice. It often shows that they want to work with the city to get things done. Those promises are not enforceable in a straight zoning change. So it's cool that they're saying that. It doesn't mean anything. Even if you say, I'll approve it in acknowledgement of those changes, they're not enforceable. So you can still consider them. If you trust the applicant, cool, but those are not something that, if they don't do it in the future, you're kind of out of luck. Then you have SUPs. SUPs are what we did today. So when you have, if you look into your ordinances that govern this, you will have what is allowed, and then you'll have a grid that shows you what is sometimes allowed if y'all approve it. Things like this, well, I don't want to say much about what we did today, but there are several items that are only allowed with your approval. That's what we call an SUP. We probably deal with that a lot. So any sort of specific use permit is someone coming to you and saying, hypothetically, I want to open a car wash. It is only allowed in this district. If you give me permission, can I please open a car wash? You can place conditions on that car wash, on granting of that SUP. And those are binding conditions. They would have to comply by them. That being said, it's a recommendation from us. It's up to council. Council needs to reinforce that condition. But you are able to evaluate promises and tack them on as a condition. We just need to make sure when we make the motion that we say, to approve this specific use permit, recommend approval of the specific use permit with the added conditions of, and go ahead and tack them into your motion. That way we have it in the record that, because often there will be like 20 different things they say and we only really care about 3 of them. So let's make sure we have a clear record of all of that. That being said, a site plan is required for approval of an SUP. Your staff is very good. They will have that for you. It won't make it onto the agenda without a site plan. So don't, right? Probably. So there's going to be a site plan there. That's just for everyone's knowledge that you need to have a site plan. Site plans. So you have rules in your ordinance that discuss site plans and what they need to be. They're in your packet today if you want to take a closer look at what an example of 2 examples of them. But it's a chance for them to say, here's what I'm going to build and here are how I'm going to make sure I comply with everything. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. Okay, your third type, PDs. PDs allow for zoning to be specific to a particular parcel. Basically, it's y'all sitting here and negotiating out what the regulations are. You can put conditions, but they have to have their development plan present with them. They have to have it ready for you. Without a development plan, you're not approving a PD. You don't know enough about it without a development plan. So it shouldn't come in front of you without it, but just in case. But yeah, you can negotiate stuff, you can set conditions on those. Really, so to recap, you can set conditions on everything except a straight zone change. So if the P&Z recommends denial, or 20% or more of the area of lots subject to a zoning change, or those immediately adjacent within 200 feet file their protest. So they either show up or they let Susie know in their replies what's going on with this. Then it doesn't change what y'all do. Yes, sir.
We would know at that time, or at least at the meeting, I'm guessing in the first however many minutes, the city staff would count the protests that they got mailed in.
You'll be notified. It'll be in the packet probably.
Got it. So we would know if it hit that 20% at some point. Okay, got it.
So it doesn't change, y'all will know, so to take it into consideration, it does not change what needs to happen here, but when the council goes to handle it, when the council goes to vote, you'll need 3/4 of the city council in order to override either y'all's denial, even if you approve it. So even, say we have an item 20% or 30%, or everyone in the neighborhood comes in and says, we don't want this, and y'all still approve it for whatever reason, council will still have to have 75% of their members vote to approve it. If y'all deny it, regardless of how many people protest, if y'all ever deny anything, so if y'all ever were to deny anything in this room, council then needs 3/4 of the council in order to approve that zoning change. To override or to veto y'all's denial, they need 75%. That doesn't mean y'all need 75%. Y'all still need your normal simple majority, but they need 75%. Yeah, so with straight zoning, if someone comes in and says, I want to build a house, not that I want to build a house, that they want to rezone to commercial. The details of what kind of store they want to put on that property are not relevant to your consideration. It is just, would commercial be appropriate in this area? So you don't get to ask like, oh, are you going to sell school uniforms? That really makes sense because we're near a school.
Right. We can't, the city council can. Because the city council put that thing on that new shopping center that said no chicken and no donuts. So we can't, we as the Planning and Zoning Commission say, this is zoned commercial.
Zoning, not
Right.
for other things.
Yeah, this is commercial. The developer wants to build a strip center. We either say, yes, that's okay, but we don't get to say no dry cleaners, no drive-throughs, whatever.
Yes, so this comes before all of that. This
Oh,
comes
okay.
before they even are asking for their permits or saying what they want. This is just them coming in and saying, you know, my name is John, and this is currently zoned residential, and I want it to be zoned commercial. We do not, at that point, ask, well, why? We just, our only consideration is, does it make sense for this area? Something being commercial totally mess up this area? They then have to come back and say, when they have their permits and stuff, or if it's a special use, once you approve commercial, anything that is commercial can go into that lot if it is allowed by right in that area. But we don't get to ask when they come in and say, I really want to be a commercial area, what they're selling or why they want it. It is just, is being commercial compatible with the surrounding area? If they then need, you know, an SUP because they want to put a car wash, yeah, then that's another request they have to submit. That's not done all at once. Plan developments, though, for the PDs, you can ask. The details are relevant at that point of what is intended. So for a PD or for for PD, you can set approval, set conditions. You can have a conditional approval. You can ask about their intended use. You can totally do all of that. Okay, platting. Platting is a geographical description that aids in recording. It is when you look at TAD, you can see, we're in Tarrant. If you look at TAD, you can see plats. Basically, the idea is you don't want, the general philosophy of a plat is, you don't want enormous plats because they can be hard to divide later, and you want someone to be able to sell a plat quickly and efficiently. If you have crazy, weird shapes, pieces of land, those can be harder to market. The idea is that platting, as it exists when it originally began to exist, was that these parcels are supposed to be marketable, right? If these parcels are weird, they're less marketable in the future. It also is so that we can provide infrastructure, utilities, water, plumbing, electricity, all of that in an effective way. Here's a plat map. So the purpose of platting is, like, you're going to hear these words over and over: promote the health, safety, morals, or general welfare of the municipality, and the safe, orderly, and healthful development of the municipality. The safe, orderly, healthful development is less commonly used, but it still stands. So, platting and subdivision regulations apply. Well, you don't have any ETJ out here, right? No, yeah, y'all are built out. Okay, you have different types of plats. You have prelim plats, you have final plats, you have replats, and you have minor plats and amending plats. Minor plats and amending plats are administrative. They are ministerial. You don't need to be involved in them. And if they do come in front, so as I say, platting in general. Platting is ministerial, guys. You don't have any discretion. If someone comes in front of you with a plat, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you have 300 people in this audience yelling at you. You cannot deny that plat. The plat is ministerial. It's administrative even. I honestly recommend putting plats on consent agenda and not even discussing them, just getting them done, because you have to approve them. You don't have a choice. All of this work, the rights have been taken away from you by the legislature on whether you can deny these or not. It's all administrative. So you don't have any discretion on whether you're going to approve a plat or not. So I told you a lot. Plats you approve. You don't have a legal discretion in the matter. Okay? You can try to deny it, but we're not going to let you deny plats in here. It's too many ways you're going to get a lawsuit if you do it. So, plotting versus zoning. Plotting, you're just checking boxes. Zoning, you are making law. right? You have a lot more leeway in what you can do. So it's important to kind of assess when you have something in front of you. Is it a zoning change or is it a plat change? Basically, is the applicant legally bound to perform what he, and also, additionally, you need to ask, is the applicant legally bound to perform what he orally promises? That's what we talked about with the straight zoning changes versus the other zoning changes. If he's not, keep that in mind, because sometimes, again, they're going to make promises in their presentation, and it may or may not be helpful to what you can actually require. Can you, and then, yeah, can you recommend conditions on approval? Sometimes is the answer, but not for straight or for other things like that. We talked about walking quorum, we talked about substantial interest. Fair Housing Act. This is what I was talking about earlier. This is, on its face, not complicated. It can become complicated in the future. We don't have any issues really pending in Saginaw that this could be an issue. But basically, if the practice of any group makes housing unavailable to a person based on their race, color of their skin, religion, sex, national origin, familial status, or disability, then it is prohibited under the FHA. It's what we talked about earlier. It's when you question if a, religious entity wants to come in and you question what kind of church are they trying to build, something like that, right? We do not make decisions based on, what the people will be practicing in that area, or whether they will be practicing in that area, or whether it's, whether it's a man or a woman presenting in front of you, anything like that, okay? When it comes to housing, and in general, I'm just gonna say in general, this is specific to fair housing. Just don't even consider it when you're doing anything here. So, demographics, familial status, whether someone has kids or whether someone is married or whether someone has children out of wedlock, it is not relevant to your consideration. Those are not things that we consider. Whether that person is below the poverty line, above the poverty line, or a millionaire, or if they own Apple, that is not a consideration in your decision. Their socioeconomic status is of no concern of ours when we are making land use decisions, okay?
Do you know when the Fair Housing Act was approved? What year?
I do not, since I've been around.
I'm thinking at one point in time, every single one of them were involved.
I think they've added things over time because like the socioeconomic status might be like a newer thing, because I don't understand how like I've read about a lot of cities or kind of like denying Section 8 apartments or something.
Yeah.
And
So it has been added to constantly.
Yeah.
The original FHA passed in 1968. It is constantly being amended and added to. Because of where it falls, you also have administrative law that comes into play. So you have guidelines being issued that aren't necessarily amendments to the law, but they're your dear colleague letters coming out of the administration that is guiding this as well. So you are correct. It is extremely common that you call it redlining, where you have, a highway or something that divides it, and you can tell where housing is being approved or denied in racial or socioeconomic ways. We're not going to do that.
Just drive through any community in America, pretty much.
Sure. So I'll use Austin as an example. I went to school in Austin. So if you're in Austin, you have 35 that cuts right through the city. It's gentrifying rapidly, but you have downtown and you have the east side. And then you have everything to the west. That highway was built, if not intentionally, subconsciously, to divide the city in half based on race. You see that in cities everywhere. There's great books you can read on it. It is often tied to zoning. So part of what we are doing here is attempting to not allow that to happen here or allow it to happen any further here.
I guess, so look, I understand everything you're saying, and I agree with what you're saying, to a degree as a human. I don't want anyone to deny me anything. That being said, how is there such a thing as the NIMBY and YIMBY type stuff, like the not in my backyard? Like, everyone that comes and says, oh, I don't want apartments by me. Well, why don't they want apartments? Like, do you know what I mean? Because, there's only so many reasons that you can say before it winds down to one of the things on this list.
So what I would say is when you have someone like that, I can't control why someone is coming in here and saying they don't want an apartment.
No, forget the audience. I'm talking about
With y'all.
how does a city and a planning zoning commission even say no apartments in this part of town, or no more apartments in the city from here on out, or whatever, you know what I mean? Or no more, we only want single family homes or senior living. How did they do that or not do that?
Those decisions need to be made for reasons of traffic control or for reasons of supplying affordable housing. They can't be made so you can make a decision saying we want more affordable housing, but you can't deny someone because they can't afford housing. Does that make sense? So, unfortunately, it may be, I don't say it's hopeless. You are trying to work against your biases at every moment in order to try to effectuate this goal.
Yeah. And, yeah, okay. And then to try to get more single-family homes instead of whatever everyone tends to not want, which is high apartments and tiny apartments. We would want to make the city nicer and do the overlay districts where the signage is nice and try to make it a more beautified community so that developers want to come build luxury homes here or whatever.
Let me just clarify, because we had some of this confusion back in February.
Yeah.
Apartments go both ways.
Right, yeah.
You have apartments that are very, very affordable and exist because they're very affordable, and then you have apartments that are very, very expensive.
They're twice the amount of my mortgage, yeah.
Exactly. So when we hear people talking about apartments, we need to just totally forget what the rent could even possibly be in those apartments, and we need to focus on, is there appropriate traffic control in the area?
How many units, how many parking spots, where it's going to go,
Exactly.
where the entrances and exits to the apartment complex going to be.
Exactly. We need to fully disregard. We don't inquire. We don't want to know what that item is going to be because it could. You can ask. I'm not saying you can't ask if this is going to be affordable housing, but I don't want your consideration to be, oh, we don't need any more housing that only houses people who need government assistance, right? If they tell you this is fair housing and we are subsidized, that's awesome, that's helpful. That cannot be a reason you deny them out of concern that the people who need housing assistance might be moving into that area. That is only a positive and negative, right? So we just need to be careful. We need to make sure when we're building our record of why we approve or deny things, we avoid.
Capital improvements? You are too, right? Capital improvements coming?
The CI still around, is that what, they still exist, right, since this PowerPoint was written? Your CI group does? Does it still exist? It hasn't gone away since this?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, P&Z serves as the Capital
y'all are.
Improvements Advisory,
Okay, cool.
plus an added ad hoc member.
Okay.
Got you.
They doubled our pay, too.
Yeah.
Is it $2 now, or?
I didn't know we got paid for this, so that's a new thing to me. I've been coming here 6 months.
Zero.
Right, oh, okay, yeah. 2 times 0 is still 0, yeah, got it.
You can put that in the note. I will be taking that one.
See, I wasn't sure if it was now $2 or $0, so that was what my question was.
Okay.
But,
All right, thank you for indulging me. I just was wondering because, I've been on here for a few months, but I haven't had an apartment complex come on here. But you read in the paper, you see on the news, city denies whatever, and I'm like, how can they do that? But I guess there's other ways. it's not black and white. It's that there's a lot of nuance that goes into it, and there could be other reasons why it was denied, such as the school can't expand to fit 800 new students. So,
Yeah, and so you'll see the more you do city stuff, if ever you see anything that comes up in the news, go pull the minutes of the meeting, because that's going to be a lot more revealing than what the reporters said happened. Sometimes they're right, but go look at the minutes and see what they considered.
okay.
So your CIP advisory committee, so if y'all act as the CIP, then your job is to advise and assist with land use, basically. You review it, you file written comments, you monitor. You can advise, so because y'all are so close to the citizens, y'all are in a position where you can see when something just isn't working. If we have totally built out our housing and we see that we're getting repeated requests next to, our single-family area, that they need more single-family homes to be built, y'all can advise that we should redistrict that area, right? Y'all can advise council to move for that. When we see needs that are arising in our community, y'all can advise on that. Y'all can advise on revisions. If you see something coming up in an overlay, so, there's a sign requirement or a lighting requirement in an overlay that just isn't working, and no one is able to accommodate that or accomplish that, y'all can advise the council on that and say, hey, this isn't working. Like, we're having to handle 20 applicants, well, never here, but 3 applicants a month based on just because they can't get the right lighting in this area. So that's something that y'all as CIP can let council know. Never mind, y'all are water, wastewater, drainage, and facilities here. Okay, so forget about lighting. Talk about traffic flow and water. Y'all are limited here. Sorry, ignore. I apologize for that. Okay, let's talk about February real quick. I'm done. Let's talk about February. You wanted to come back to February?
Yeah, February was, how do I put it? It became personal. And there was a point during one of the gentlemen's where he basically he sat there and said that we were lining our pockets in order to approve stuff. And when he started to question my integrity, I held my tongue as long as I could. And at the end, I finally said my piece. But as I was talking, my blood was going up. And it's like, I'm here because I want to make the city of Saginaw better. But he kept pushing. And when is there a point in time during that where I'm allowed to say, sir, you can leave?
So,
Because if it wouldn't have been the other way around, it might have been me saying, it's been fun being a planning and zoning commissioner. I've had a great time, but I'm going to have a few words with this gentleman that don't come back on the city.
absolutely. So it wouldn't be you, it would be William would have to do it. But so at any point when something becomes disrespectful, just because you're elected officials doesn't mean you have to take abuse. So I don't have your procedures in front of me, but generally you give them 2 warnings. You give them 1 warning where you explain not again. You give them a 2nd warning where you say, sir, you'll be removed if you continue that. And then on the 3rd warning, you ask them to leave. We don't have a bailiff present for these meetings. I don't think we expected that meeting to go as spicily as it did. If in the future we suspect there's a meeting that might end like that, we can ask a deputy or an officer to come down.
Yeah, because in addition to that, he was also the apartments are going to bring in quote unquote lower income people, and
So I will say, I did appreciate when he said that.
and he tap danced all around what he really wanted to say.
It was clear what he wanted to say, and I will say to the credit of all of you and the audience, when he said that, you had an audible from everyone as he said that. No one was pleased with that. Y'all all recognized it for what it was immediately. I don't think anyone was taken by that.
Yeah, but I wasn't going to let him take my voice. And so that was why I made my feelings known at the end in a very respectful manner to make sure that I respected the commissioner's court of the P&Z.
And I
But
think
yeah,
you did a
it
perfect
was,
job. It was tough. It was a tough,
It was close.
yeah, it was a tough meeting.
So I wasn't even here. I was in Germany actually when that meeting happened. But I have questions about it, just reading over the minutes. One, how come that item isn't on this meeting? Because this is the next meeting since that meeting, right? So, but because,
Was it tabled?
well, it's,
Council's already
We
heard
did
it.
not table it, we actually denied that one.
We denied it.
okay,
So
all
was it-
right, got it.
A motion, I have the minutes right here.
Yeah, no, I guess I flipped through it. Okay,
We had a motion to table it, but not a second.
got it.
That's right, it died on the table.
Oh, okay, that's
Yeah.
why. Okay, got
Yeah,
it.
So that one
Now,
died, so then we had the motion to deny.
but like it said, no developer asked to change the zoning. It was the city that was changing the zoning, right?
It was the city's push, yeah. The city requested it. I do believe the city denied it at council as well, yeah. So, no, the
So-
city can ask for zoning to be changed. So what had happened was, and correct me if I'm wrong, I had just kind of come into the city at this point. When council passed their overlays and they, their new comp, they were trying to slowly bring areas of the city into compliance with the new comp plan. So the city was the one who requested that zone change and initiated it. And is this the field that the church owned? Yeah, okay, yeah. So there were, you can see it in the minutes, the concerns were, well, this field has been empty for so long. I love this field being empty, and I don't think, I think the church should be building in it. I don't think anyone else should. How can you tell me that if the church is okay with this zoning change, they're not going to turn around and sell this property? And we were like, well, we can't speak for the church, we're not the church. However, this is a city-requested zone change, so we recommend approval of it. The audience was very unhappy with it and very spirited. There was also, this is also the summer station, I'm trying to remember. There had been recently a change. that had-
Substation.
The substation, yeah. There had been a change in the geographic area that the citizens were very upset about. And it kind of rolled into this whole thing where they were upset really about the first item, but it played into the second item.
And there was a change in the substation? I'm sorry, what?
Substation went up, right?
So again, it had nothing to do with the item. So when we were just analyzing that item,
Yeah.
you just can't take a look at that. But it obviously became an emotional thing for the residents in the area, justifiably, I understand.
Yeah.
But the situation was that they were allowed by right to have a substation. You can have a substation anywhere. That's just,
Yeah.
I think, Texas law.
Yeah, that's the law.
So that's not something that we were able to change at all. But nonetheless, we obviously were pointed the finger that
Yeah.
we did not share information about it going in, and that it was just an ugly sight to be seen. But again, it comes down to some screening requirements and things like that. They did have some screening, but there's only so many things that you can forcibly have them follow if nothing has been put in place to differ from that. You can't give them different requirements just because people are against the substation, because it's, again, allowed by right. And so that's what people were just
That brought,
opposed. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and then,
That was just the tip of the iceberg.
yeah, there was a lot.
Yeah.
But the city did, like Bessie said, it was just part of trying to implement the comprehensive plan. It doesn't matter who owns the property. We were looking at it just as undeveloped parcel. Let's go ahead and rezone just in case. But their taking was a church is allowed by right anywhere, so why even rezone it? So at that point, staff heard everyone's voice and we just let it go at that point. So that's why we just stopped with the,
Okay.
with the rezoning.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah, so we didn't really talk about by right. So there are certain things that we just don't have anything to do with. If they can be there by right, there's no, they can be there. And, churches for one of those things. We don't regulate churches or religious, I should say religious entities. We don't, there are certain things that substations, electric companies, franchises, utility franchises.
Right, yeah, and we're all using more power. Everybody's getting solar panels and EVs, and where does that power come from? It can't go on the same lines, so
Yeah.
it's got to go in someone's backyard.
So we are really forced to be deferential to whatever the state legislature tells us in those matters. But yeah, so in the future, when a meeting gets that tense, we are, as chairman, you are able to remove people from the meeting. I don't recommend normally doing it immediately. I recommend a warning. One warning first, to watch his tone or to be respectful or to stay on topic, or a reminder to be respectful. That being said, we are a public forum. Public hearings are public forums. It can be difficult to remove people unless there is open profanity generally, or disorderly conduct. Everyone yelling is a reason that we can start sending people out.
Right.
They have a right to protest, but they don't have a right to disrupt a public meeting.
Yeah, they'd only seen that once. The previous chairman, we had one really contentious meeting that he about broke the gavel when he slammed it down, trying to get somebody's attention.
Yeah.
No, you aren't going to do that.
Yeah.
And that was one of those situations where the follow-up meeting, we had a bailiff, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we ever have items that we think are going to be contentious like that, the police station's right down the street. We can grab someone. So I prosecute out here, just as a side note, I'm out here, I have a bailiff. They get overtime to be out here. They love being out here. They're right down the street and they get paid pretty well to be here. So they're happy to be here if we need them. All right, are there any other questions that I can answer?
No, my question was just really the protocol for it, because
Yeah.
I don't think the guy needed to be kicked out, but he was
So,
gonna know how I felt, whether
yeah.
he liked it or not.
You handled it perfectly by waiting until the end to do it. You could have done it during the meeting. I appreciated you waiting until the end because it kept a back and forth from happening. Yeah, so I think you handled it perfectly well, the way you did, without any notes to give you on that. So the main thing to really take away from this, y'all kind of understand zoning. You can refer back to this PowerPoint, it's in your packets. The open meetings issues are really what I see coming back more and more often to bite councils. It's having group chats, it's replying all to emails, it's things like that. The only prosecution I have ever seen for Open Meetings Act violations happened in South Lake.
Soccer.
Yeah, so without any comment toward that, it is we know that Tarrant County will prosecute for it. I will say those cases got dismissed eventually, but not after a lot of headlines and a lot of comment, and a lot of money spent on behalf of the city. So they will and that was a electronic communication that was prosecuted. So they will prosecute for it. We know that it exists. It's very uncommon, but if we can just not have us be the ones who are doing it and get caught, let's not do it at all. So open meetings things, just, again, don't daisy chain, don't be replying all, don't see each other in the hall before or after the meeting. Once I leave here, don't sit here and talk about a tobacco shop. Or anything like that. I truly advise once the meeting is we call it the afterglow at my firm. Once the meeting is over, especially if you're at a council meeting and it's 10 p.m., people like to hang out. People will get a drink after and they talk about what just happened. Please don't ever do that.
No, I'd like to go get dinner.
Yeah.
Sure.
I got one more question for I think we're wrapping up.
Yeah.
So it might have been my first or second meeting, we were talking about a change. The developer came on a development that's here in town and wanted to change the shape of a building or, something that they had proposed and was approved. And it was only one part of the development. it was the far east side of the development. And so when we came to talk about it, there was two other gentlemen here that were down closer to the end. They were kind of asking, like, where is this, And I was like, well, it's north of the Chase Bank, and it's behind here, and behind there is that. And the other city attorney, the one that used to be here, she was like, you can't talk about that, And I was also mentioning that, like,
Was it after the meeting?
no, it was while we were talking about it because
The item
Miss-
was live?
it was live, yeah.
So, Mr. Chairman, with the issue with that was you can't take into account the larger development
Okay.
if we're only talking about that specific parcel. So for this instance, we were talking just about the shops,
Yep.
the square, and I believe that it was mentioned the overall square development.
Correct, yeah.
And so you weren't allowed to talk about the development as a whole because the applicant was only discussing that specific parcel. So it's owned by separate people.
Right. I guess my concern with that is that the behind, so, I don't know. I mean, like, okay, we're supposed to take a lot of things into consideration. Traffic, like, for example, if someone wants to open up a new charter school, traffic and parking and da-da-da-da-da. So why can't we say, hey, behind this long strip, there was supposed to be 3 sit-down restaurants that were proposed to us before, and now instead of having like buildings with walk-through, drive-through, where you can see back behind there, there's going to be one long building where you can't even see the other commercial property behind it. That was my point of bringing it up, because I felt like even though a different developer might own it, we approved it and the city council approved it as commercial with sit-down restaurants. And my point was, if I was going to open up a sit-down restaurant, I wouldn't want my view from the main road to be blocked by a big long building. So I don't understand when we're supposed to like only consider what's in the red lines and like then sometimes holistically look at everything, I don't know, case by case basis, or we just ask if we have a question.
Yeah, I think we'll advise you on it. So generally, you're only supposed to be considering, so we can talk about traffic flow, right? But it sounds like, and I don't know what the item was exactly, because I wasn't here. It sounds like he was it?
There was supposed to be 3, so the initial plan was 3 individual buildings, like about 5,000 square feet.
And then-
There were pad site buildings. And behind it were 3 other pad site buildings. And they changed that to one big long building on the main road. So my point was, well, now you're blocking the view behind it. Who's going to want to go back there? That was my reasoning for bringing that up.
What was the
The issue was that when you discuss the view behind it, you're talking about a whole separate development. It is a puzzle. However, those puzzles are owned by different people, so you
Okay.
can't make a decision on one piece of the puzzle based off what the person behind that is doing.
Okay.
So for instance, for the SUP, you can't base it off of what Albertsons is doing. You have to base it just on this one entity.
Okay.
So that was the issue with that.
All right, I understand, for sure.
Yeah. As a whole, you would be able to compare it just when you're looking at the overall zoning, if it's compatible. But when you get to specifics about this building is having a Chick-fil-A or this building has this, then that's when it gets into more biases.
Now I understand. Got it. Okay.
Susan, anything else before we wrap up tonight? All right, Chairman, if you'd like to.
All right. Are we doing a little development update, or no, we have it in the agenda, we don't need it?
The next to the,
Sorry.
finish the workshop, we're now going to staff report.
Sorry,
Okay.
Maria, I wasn't trying to.
We have to follow.
You're fine.
I understand now.
Sorry, y'all.
So we have the April project updates, specifically to the city improvement projects. The Knowles reconstruction is scheduled to open up on June 1st.
The future dragway, you mean?
Future driveway,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. And then for our Saginaw Library, no paving has started. The contractor is working on the structure currently. For the switchyard, the pavilion has been completed and should be scheduled to be fully completed by the 24th of May. Yeah, do y'all have any questions?
When is the old fire station scheduled to be torn down and developed? Any ideas?
Mr. Chairman, we currently don't have a timeline on our end. We have not received any civil submittal for that yet. So I think they're still in the works of just financials or something on their side, but no official submission.
But the property was sold, right? Correct?
I think that they purchased it a while ago, yeah. I think they're just trying to come up with the timeline and all the specific details, but we have not received a formal submission.
And that the victory shops are also still,
So we have received a civil submission that we're reviewing tomorrow, actually. But that's just on the infrastructure. So once the infrastructure is decided upon, then that's when they can come in and have the pad sites and all the other projects.
Yeah.
how many iterations have you had of that?
I'm sorry?
How many iterations have you had going through this?
It's been a couple, yes, sir.
Okay.
We had a garage gab at our house a few weeks ago where I had some of the city council and the mayor and a bunch of the different staff come. Am I allowed to tell my fellow P&Z members anything that was said and asked there, or keep that out since it hasn't been fully applied through the city? Do you know what I mean?
I think we would not,
Okay,
yes, we would just have to stick to the agenda.
gotcha.
But if anyone has any other questions for Maria or myself, if not, that's our report.
Goes on, we have no executive session, that just brings us to adjournment.
I'll make a motion for adjournment.
I second that.
Motion second for adjournment, all in favor?
Aye.
All any opposed? We are adjourned.
Y'all have a great evening.
Hey, y'all too.